Hey guys, Arkan Templar here with another episode of Better Know a Heresy. Nestorianism, named after Nestorius. Most heresies are named after their founder. Nestorius lived in the late 4th and early 5th century AD, and he was the Patriarch of Constantinople, which is, generally speaking, the second highest position in Christendom. The Patriarch of Constantinople holds a first among equals position, somewhat like the Pope, but not possessing any of the power. He theoretically is the most senior member of the Orthodox Church, the Greek Orthodox Patriarch of Constantinople. So Nestorius came up with the idea. Nestorianism is the idea that Christ has two completely separate natures, which are not related to one another, or not even natures, but persons. There's two completely different persons in Christ. How exactly this works is an interesting idea. I mean, is this like adoptionism, where Jesus was just some random guy, and then God made him his son and put some divine essence into him? Were two separate beings sharing like a body? Was it like one of those things where there's an angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other? I'm not really sure because not a lot of it survives. It's a lot of these are very kind of subtle and difficult to describe. Um, I tend to, just for the sake of simplicity, take a more kind of basic version of it and maybe exaggerate it a bit and miss some of the subtleties, but just to try and explain it, because we could be here all day talking about the linguistics of different Christological terms and that kind of thing. But anyways, so Nestorianism believed that Christ was two separate people. So when he died, only his human side died. His divine side did not die. Because Nestorius did not believe that God could die. He also uh, didn't believe that God could be born. So he essentially I'm not sure exactly how it worked. Probably because a lot of the stuff doesn't survive, and I couldn't find exactly how we thought it worked. So I guess the human part of Jesus died, and then it was resurrected. I guess that raises the question whether or not the human person of Jesus had a soul independent of the divine side. It's very confusing. Essentially, the problem with Nestorianism is that if God didn't die, then Christ's death doesn't really have any meaning. Because the idea is that Christ taking the because Christ is God, God taking the punishment for all of humanity is an infinite sacrifice. It can pay for an infinite number of sins because God is infinitely good. The suffering of a just man, the sacrifice of a just man is more effectuous than the sacrifice of an evil man. Um, I guess if that makes sense to you. Um, basically, basically it's just merit. Christ had infinite merit, and he could absorb an infinite number of sins because he is the incarnation of good in and of itself. And Nestorianism basically denies that the supernatural part of him died, that God physically allowed himself to be killed as payment for all the sins of humanity. So that's kind of the issue with it. It basically would, if Nestorius was right, then baptism would be pointless. Um, Sins could not really be forgiven. Perhaps they could be forgiven in some manner, but it would kind of defeat the entire purpose of Christianity and the entire purpose of Christ dying on the cross. Now, Nestorianism had a long history. Broadly speaking, most of the churches east of Syria, including most notably the Indian one, the ones in China and the ones in Persia, were Nestorian in nature, through whatever reason that had more success in the east. However, when the Syro Malkabar church in India finally, they were never really formally in schism. It was more just that they were on the other side of the world and there wasn't any contact with them. But when they formally, fully established recontact and were reintegrated into the Catholic Church during the 20th century, part of the agreement was that they would give up any remaining aspects of Nestorianism, um, and just adopt, I guess, I forget what the Nicene version is called. Because I know Miaphysitism is okay, but I forget what they call Duaphysitism. I'm not sure. Whatever the idea that Christ has two natures, one human and one divine in one person, is the Orthodox view. I personally, as I've said, hold to a Miaphysite view that Christ had one nature that was both human and divine, which is also acceptable. But yeah, that's basically Nestorianism. There's not really a particular equivalent to it today. It's kind of similar to Gnosticism, but it's largely kind of a strange thing that didn't really that existed in some parts of the world but didn't perennially show up again and again as something like adoptionism or Arianism did. Anyways, this is Argent Templar.